I'd like to welcome everyone to our May speaker series for Napa-Solano Audubon. This is our last meeting of the spring. Our next meeting will be in September on the second Thursday, and we'll start off the meetings here at Napa Valley Lutheran Church. We had an election during May, and we were begging people to come forward. Hi, Carol. Begging people to come and take our places. Yeah, my wife is. But no one came forward. So our slate of officers continues. And the good news is, so I don't have to quit, a number of the members of the board have stepped forward to help out and are taking over some of the duties that I've been doing so that I can have a life beyond being president of Napa-Solano Audubon. So I can actually get out and bird is the main reason. Yeah. So one of my first announcements is we have brand new Kestrel t-shirts, and Pam Condos is in our audience here, and she is coordinating the sales. We now fixed the sale button on our website, and so you can order your Kestrel t-shirt right on the website, and Pam gets an email. She'll call you up and arrange how to get you your t-shirts. They're only $25. It's a steal. They're really great quality t-shirts. So go on our website and look for the little shop button and click on it. In addition to t-shirts, we still are selling our breeding bird atlases. One of them written by Murray Berner, who's here in our audience, and others were written by a collection of folks, probably mostly Murray, and they're on sale. And the keynote book is our photo book, our coffee table book, and we sell that for $50. It's got a lot of beautiful photos that Murray and others took. We continue with our weekly bird walks, and Andrew Ford, who's been giving them, had an infection in his ankle, and so he's been unable to lead them, but thankfully Karina Garcia, our student intern, who has been leading beginner bird walks with Carol in the back, she is taking over the weekly walks until Andrew's better. So this week, our walk on Saturday begins at 8 o'clock at Napa's Moore Creek Park. So it's a great walk out there. The birds, the migrants are coming in like crazy, and so are the residents. So if you want to have a lot of fun, meet Karina at Moore Creek Park at 8 o'clock on Saturday. She's turning around and doing a beginner's walk on Sunday at 9 o'clock. So beginners usually get up a little later. And this week's walk is to Lake Solano County Park. And Lake Solano County Park, for those of you who haven't been there, is really cool. There are phainopeplas that breed there. There are occasionally Lewis's woodpeckers that breed there, a lot of water birds. This year, I didn't locate any Lewis's woodpeckers. I don't know if Murray's been there. There was one, okay, I missed it. But anyways, those two walks are great, and please join them. Our monthly field trip for the month of June is going to the Sierra Valley and Yuba Pass, June 5th through the 8th. And yours truly and Bruce Thompson in the back are gonna lead that. And we're almost full. So if you're interested in going, there's a registration button on the website, and there's also anyone who signed up for field trips, you received an invite through there, and there's a link to register. Okay, let's see. It's a great trip. It's gonna be a 4-day trip. So we're gonna spend 2 days up in the higher elevations and at least 1 day down in Sierra Valley. There's lots of water birds. It's one of the best areas of California, I think, outside of Napa County, of course, right, Murray? So Earth Day has come and gone. We had wonderful turnout at our Napa Creek cleanup. More than 20 volunteers showed up to help our member Betty La Bastida clean up Napa Creek. Together with other RCD teams, they picked up over 200 pounds of trash, over 100 pounds of recycled materials, and sadly at Napa Creek alone, they picked up 800 cigarette butts. So please stop smoking, and we won't have to pick up those butts every year. We have active scholarships in process right now. We had quite a few applicants from both Napa and Solano County, and the scholarship team is working on picking a winner from both Napa and Solano County for our scholarship. We present the winners with a $2,000 scholarship to help them in their first year at college. They have to be in a field, either wildlife biology or a similar related field. Hopefully someone who will carry the torch when we're all gone. So I think the decision will be coming out later in May. So I mentioned the sales button on our website, but also under birding resources, we have a number of field guides that are really excellent guides and can help you identify birds. So if you're interested in purchasing one, we have the Hensel Napa, is it Napa County Birds? It's a great little small guide, but it has probably 250 or 300 species of birds in it. It's fantastic. And we also sell Sibley's with connections to local bookstores. This Saturday is Cornell's Laboratory of Ornithology's Global Big Day. Every year they have this Global Big Day. You can go out for 10 minutes or an hour or all day and use eBird to turn in your list. And together they hope to have millions of birds recorded on that day. This Saturday, May the 10th. So I think that's all. Is there anything else that you can think of that I missed? If you're interested in the Sierra Valley monthly trip, June 5th through 8th, we may have one or two more spots. Yeah, you got to go up on the 4th because we start on the 5th. But anyways, 4th to 8th, I think we have one or two more spots. So don't miss out on that great field trip if you have the time. It's my pleasure to introduce Mike Palladini. He is where is he? He is the director of the Land Trust of Napa County, and he's in charge of the stewardship program. So what's cool about that is that they are taking care of literally 22,000 acres of land that's been set aside in our county for wildlife and plants and for people to enjoy. He has had a number of roles during his career. I'm not sure if he's a native of California or not, but he came from, where is it, Mike? Montana?
I was in Montana for 5 years.
Yeah.
Coming back to Northern
Okay, well, we'll let him come back then. Okay. Anyways, it's my pleasure to introduce Mike. I'm going to mute mine so that we don't have this echo effect, and I think we're all set to go.
Testing. Sounds better.
Yeah.
Can everyone on Zoom hear me okay?
You might want to turn your volume.
Okay.
So.
Let's see here. My volume's all the way up here, so.
So if you're online, then we'll let Mike say a few words. Just make sure you can hear him. Okay.
Okay, and let me gotta actually retrieve. There it is. Okay, great. Let's go forward. Ooh. Sorry, it's not forwarding. So let me just stop share for a second. Sure. Oh, okay. No, that's okay. So again, is that going to go? All right, I have this problem sometimes. Sorry. It's just not forwarding. So give me just a second here. Stop share. Just go to this. See if this will work at all.
We have a workaround if it doesn't work.
Okay, but let's see if I can actually forward the slides now. Okay, full screen. Oh, okay, yes. All right. Okay.
Hey.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I do really appreciate the opportunity to present to you all today on the Land Trust of Napa County's Land Stewardship Program. I'm a bird person, so love Audubon and what it does. And yeah, thank you. So this is a pretty packed presentation with a lot of content. So as Mark mentioned, if we could just hold questions till the end, I'd appreciate it. I'll just start with a brief overview. The Land Trust of Napa County is a nonprofit land conservation and stewardship organization. We've been around for about 49 years. In that time, we've protected over 94,000 acres. That includes 26 protected natural areas that we own in fee, totaling about 22,000 acres, as Mark mentioned. Those are the land shown in dark green on our conservation lands map here, spread pretty well throughout the county. So why do we protect these lands? Why do we work to steward these lands? Why do we do what we do? In answering that question, I usually kind of start at the 30,000 foot level. This is a map developed by the Nature Conservancy showing biodiversity hotspots in the United States. The cooler colors are lower levels of diversity. The warmer colors culminating in the red are the higher than highest levels of diversity. And we are in what is referred to as the California floristic province. A lot of folks may know that, along with all of the world's other Mediterranean regions, is considered a global biological diversity hotspot. That's based on the total number of plant and animal species in that floristic province and the relative proportion of those species that only occur there and nowhere else on the planet. But beyond that, you can see sort of that pinnacle of red indicating the highest level of biodiversity, essentially right in and around Napa County, San Francisco Bay region, southern end of the North Coast ranges. So we really are in a biodiversity hotspot within a biodiversity hotspot. You can see that similar pinnacle or peak of biodiversity show up in this analogous analysis by California Department of Fish and Wildlife, done as part of their Atlas of Biodiversity of California. And those lands that we protected and worked to steward really well illustrate, exemplify, encapsulate those really outstanding levels of biodiversity, both in terms of plants and animals. That's not to say that these lands are pristine. That's a word I really stay away from. There's been past human impacts, land use impacts. These are not static places, they're dynamic. So there really is a lot of work to do out there. And we really do strive to actively manage those lands. That being said, regardless of what type of management or stewardship we're doing, whether it's fuels reduction or habitat restoration, we always want to approach those activities and projects in a way that not only doesn't have negative impacts on the ecological resources, but actually benefits them. Our active land management takes lots of different forms: habitat restoration, biological assessment and monitoring, conservation science research, wildlife and climate resilience work, outreach education, and public access. And I'll touch on all of these today. So starting with one really big part of our program, habitat restoration enhancement. This can involve a lot of different things. Removing invasive exotic plant species, as Chip and others will tell you, is a really big part of what we do, major threat to biodiversity. Reestablishing native plant species in degraded areas where they've been lost through native plant propagation. Using natural disturbance for ecological effects, things like using prescribed fire to get sort of good fire effects or beneficial fire effects for things like seed germination. And we're doing this work in lots of different natural systems or plant community types: meadows and conifer forests, riparian or streamside areas, oak woodlands, and wetland systems, to name a few. Okay, so jumping into a few specific restoration projects that we've been working on. This is one of my favorites, our serpentine prairie restoration. Serpentine can refer to a lot of different things: geology and soils and plant communities. In this case, I'm using it to refer to soils that are very high in heavy metal content, things like nickel and chromium and cobalt, very low in the essential nutrients that plants typically like to grow, things like phosphorus and magnesium and calcium. Um, and that condition has really led to plant adaptation, in a number of cases, full speciation, and has led to high levels of plant endemism. That is, we have a whole host of plant species that are only found on serpentine soils now. That's sort of evidenced or shown in this graph published in the Soils and Plants of California, or this table. You can see that serpentine far and away supports more rare plant species than any other soil type in California, 285 rare plant species. The next nearest is granite with less than half. So we had some really outstanding serpentine prairie or serpentine meadow resources on our Missimer Preserve in the Snell Valley in northeastern Napa County. But we also had a big problem. And that problem was in the form of invasive exotic plant species, which are generally a major driver of biodiversity loss on a global scale. So again, it's a real priority for us. This is the priority or primary invasives here were barb goatgrass and other invasive grasses that can tolerate serpentine. Not all invasives can. And this is indicative of the pre-restoration condition. It was really just a sea of these invasive grasses. So working off restoration methodologies developed by biologists at the nearby UC Davis McLaughlin Reserve, in similar systems, we relied heavily for the restoration on prescribed burning. They found it to be a very effective, at least initial control on these invasives. In my time at the Land Trust, we've now done 4 prescribed burning projects over about 350 acres. We partner with CAL FIRE on these. And we have another prescribed burn plan for this June coming right up on a 51-acre addition to the Missimer Preserve. There's a lot of things that have to come together to get these prescribed burns done. We have to do all the environmental review and planning, work with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District on air quality, need the right fire weather conditions, the right fuel condition to carry the fire, but we also need to think about the timing of the invasives we're trying to control. So we hit them at the right time, and then we need the available CAL FIRE resources. I mentioned June timing. We're getting into wildfire season there, so CAL FIRE can get pulled off on a fire pretty quickly. We're not done after the prescribed burning. Lots of follow-up treatments over years. We do a lot of manual control working with AmeriCorps crews provided by an outfit called American Conservation Experience. We use really all the tools in the toolbox: targeted herbicide application, mowing. We really, because it's such a priority system, we really want to use all the tools at our disposal here to keep after it. So just some photographic depictions of some of the restoration benefits. This is a photo plot I set up before our first prescribed burn in 2013. You can see those meadows are dominated by those non-native invasive grasses, or that section of meadow in the photo. This is what that same spot looked like right after the prescribed burning in June of that year. And this is what that same area looked like about the same time, the first spring following the prescribed burn. So you can see in just one season, we have shifted the balance from invasive grass dominance to native forb dominance, and that's an important point to make. Calling these grasslands is kind of a misnomer. Historically, pre-invasion, these prairies were dominated by forbs. These are our non-woody, non-grass species, our wildflowers. This is a photo. This is a fence line comparison photo I took during a field trip in April 2016. You can see the untreated area on the neighbor's property is still dominated by those invasive grasses, and the restored area or the treated area in the Land Trust restoration zone is dominated by those native forbs. We've been doing some more fine scale or detailed transect-based monitoring with professional consulting botanist and Napa County flora expert Jake Rugit, who I'm sure many of you know. And through that work, Jake has confirmed that we have shifted the balance again from invasive exotic grass dominance to native forb dominance. And this is really striking. The diversity is there as well. Jake has now documented 77% of all the native, essentially valley floor, non-woody valley floor species known to occur in Napa County. That's 226 of 293 species. It includes 11 special status or rare plant species and 7 of those strict serpentine endemics I mentioned before. Here are those special status species here. Just to take an example, this is a really cool one, swamp larkspur, Delphinium uliginosum. This is the CalFlora taxonomic report for the species. You can see California endemic. It's listed on the California rare plant ranks. It is considered a strict serpentine endemic, only found on serpentine soils. And these blue dots in this map indicate the only known occurrences of this species on the planet. So really just restricted to a few counties in California, and that's the only place you're going to find it. Similar range maps for all of these species, also serpentine endemic. So basically other examples of plants that have that very limited distribution in this one part of California and are only found on serpentine soils in that small area. This is a quote from Jake's report, which I love. The diversity of plant species in the 65, this is our original 65-acre restoration area at Midsummer Snow Valley, is considered by this botanist to be unrivaled in Napa County meadow communities. So very excited to see that. Might recognize somebody in this photo, Chip. Great place for outreach and education because the wildflower displays are there as well. Get just such an amazing, yes, diversity, but also just these really, most years, these really stunning displays also. Just on that point, some examples through the years of our core restoration areas, spring of 2017, spring of 2019 at a different restoration area, spring of 2022 showing some nice diversity there, and also spring of 2022, the pink flower on the right there is another one of our rare species, pink star tulip. It's a pretty one. Okay, shifting gears to another type of restoration. This is streamside or riparian habitat restoration. Our Linda Falls Preserve near Angwin on Howell Mountain contains over a mile of Con Creek. Con Creek is one of the major water sources into Lake Hennessy, which serves as the primary municipal water supply for the city of Napa. We focus on riparian woodlands for restoration because they are highly biologically diverse and highly biologically productive. And along with that, they're highly threatened. It's estimated that between 90 and 95% of riparian woodlands in California have been lost. The threat that we were dealing with here was, just as we were talking about, invasive exotic plant species that were actively outcompeting and displacing our native plants, a whole host of shade-tolerant kind of forest understory invasives here. Just to show you how bad it can get, this is tributary of Con Creek, upstream of Linda Falls. There is actually a stream channel under there. You can see it's just a sea of Himalayan blackberry that has basically taken over and outcompeted everything else. So we started this process just with doing some invasion density mapping, mostly around blackberry because that was our priority invasive, and then also trying to get a handle on kind of in each of those invaded zones, how we were doing with remaining natives. We've, since 2014, we've spent a lot of time with, again, our ACE AmeriCorps crews doing manual invasive species removal. This is a sensitive streamside habitat, so we're doing manual control here. And then, as you see here, where it was all invasives or almost all invasives in these streamside areas didn't have a lot of vegetation left to hold things in place after we removed it. So we did some short-term stream bank erosion control. And then as opposed to the Midsummer project where we had this really great passive response from our natives after prescribed burning and reducing densities of invasives, here we really, in the heavily invaded polygons or areas, we wanted to jumpstart reestablishment of our native plants. So we collected seeds and cuttings from 24 different native species within the half-mile focal stream length here. Work with a native plant nursery to grow those plants out and outplant them. We've now grown and outplanted 6,000 native plants, and we have really good survival rates. We've been tracking that too as part of our permitting, among other things. So yeah, a great sort of second step to this restoration project. And this is a long-term endeavor. You're talking about species with long-lived seed banks. species that you got to get every single piece of the root system out or they're just going to come back. So we have to keep after it. But we have really, as we go back and resample our invaded polygons, we see that we have really significantly reduced the density and sort of in what were our heavily invaded areas. Most of those are now lightly invaded or uninvaded. I like to talk about the work we do in the context of ecosystem services, that is, benefits that humans derive from healthy ecosystems. I think one of the most prominent examples of our work in that regard is watershed and water supply protection. I kind of alluded to that with Lake Hennessy. In addition to Con Creek, we protected significant reaches of stream systems that flow into reservoirs that serve as water supplies for City of Calistoga, City of St. Helena, and other reservoirs and water sources for City of Napa. Okay, sticking with the watershed restoration theme for a moment. Another major threat to water quality and stream health is erosion and sedimentation generated on and from roads. Rural roads are a major source of stream erosion and sedimentation. It's one of the biggest reasons why, for example, Napa River is listed as an impaired watershed by the Water Resources Control Board. We work with our partners at the Napa County Resource Conservation District and Natural Resources Conservation Service on design and permitting and funding and management to fix these erosion problems, to protect water quality, starting with these really detailed road assessments to understand where the problem areas are. What we're talking about here is lowering the risk of catastrophic erosion during storms, and also sort of that more chronic erosion that is delivering fine sediment into our streams and wetlands. And frankly, this also helps improve our access for other stewardship projects and activities as well. This is about changing road shapes to get better drainage, installing specific road drainage structures, and armoring stream crossings so they act more like natural, hydrologically like natural stream channels, and they're not eroding into the road. We have treated about 20 miles of hydrologically connected road length. At this point, that's road lengths that drain directly to streams. Received quite a bit of agency and foundation funding to support this work. And based on these standardized calculations that RCD and other agencies use, we estimate that we have prevented just over 1,200 cubic yards of sediment from being delivered to local watersheds. All right. Take a quick...
There's a bird.
I'll wet my whistle. Yeah, yes, I should have said that as a caveat. Yes, I tried to describe it in my talk description, but there's some mention of birds here, but it's a lot of other stuff too. So, another type of restoration focus we have is around our oak woodlands, specifically on our Wantrip Preserve. That's the focus for this work for us. Wantrip protects several distinct types of oak woodland habitat. Oak woodlands are a priority for us because they are just so rich. According to the CDFW, they support nearly half of all of the state's terrestrial vertebrate species. And I do love white-tailed kites and Meadows woodpeckers. Our focus here has been valley oak restoration. Valley oaks are a California endemic. They're the oak that kind of likes those rich alluvial soils on valley floors, and as such, they've been really knocked back big time by agricultural conversion and urban development and other things, and to the point where now they're arguably the most threatened oak in California. This is a wonderful old growth oak. We still have a few of them around on the Wantrip Valley floor. So we are continuing 35 years of valley oak restoration, started by former caretaker Joe Calizzo, who's a botanist as well. It involves on-site acorn collection, actually collecting acorns directly from the trees when they're ripe using established protocols, sorting and often pre-germinating those acorns, outplanting, building below and above ground exclosures to exclude herbivores, and lots of site maintenance, watering over the first few dry seasons, and weeding. We have now planted thousands of oaks over lots of different sites on the valley floor, and we are tracking the survival of those species as well. Okay, switching gears to talk about another big part of our program, assessment and monitoring. Assessment really just in this case refers to you kind of got to know what you have out there to know how to prioritize management. So we get out there to do a lot of surveys and counts and things. Monitoring can take a few different forms. Efficacy monitoring is really referring to the fact that we try to get out and do a lot of monitoring to understand the effects of the projects and activities we're doing on the stewardship front out there. And then we're kind of monitoring ecological change too. This is a prominent example here. Pretty striking, about 90% of our preserve lands have burned in the last 10 years. Those are the dark green are our preserves overlaid on the fire footprint maps, 2014 to 2021. Knock on wood, we haven't had a major fire since 2021, so it does capture all of them. So we've been hit hard. Our preserves started getting hit in a pretty significant way in 2014. Folks might remember those big Lake County fires that did spill over into Napa. This is the Butts Fire that burned most of our Snow Peak Preserve. But within just a few months after those fires, we did start seeing some heartening signs of these fire-adapted native plants coming back. I love this photo because it just shows this really nice mix of pretty much all native forbs, native perennial bunch grasses, and shrubs coming back. So that's one of my favorites. This is really a botanical wonderland out here. It's part of that same Serpentine Island that includes the Midsummer Preserve I talked about. This is just 254 acres in size. It's essentially one plant community type Serpentine chaparral. It supports, we've documented with Jake's help, 14 special status plant species in this small, fairly homogeneous area. That includes some really rare plants, these strict Serpentine endemics, which I talked about, plants that are listed as rare, threatened, and endangered in California and elsewhere, things like our green jewel flower and our Hall's harmonia. In fact, these species are restricted only in northern Napa and southern Lake counties. It's the only place on the planet you're going to find them. And actually, when we documented this Hall's harmonia after these fires in 2014, it was only the second Napa observation in 40 years. I just put this one in because I love it. And it really just covered acres. This is St. Helena fawn lily. It's also a rare plant, and it just covered acres in this area. I was astounded after these fires. There was just fields of it. We got hit hard again in the 2017 by the North Bay fires. 4 preserves totaling about 3,300 acres burned. And as you can see, a very changed landscape. This is our Foot Botanical Preserve on Mount George, northeast of the city of Napa. Got out there and set up as much monitoring as we could. Lots of photo points and plots, time-lapse cameras, lots of different types of vegetation, transect monitoring for our rare species, and just looking at general species richness and abundance, and just re-inventorying our plant taxa to kind of figure out what we had sort of gained and lost. I just want to recognize this guy here. I mentioned him before, Jake Ruget. His botanical knowledge was instrumental to this, just critical to this work. We could not have done it without him. We also work with an outfit called Ecosension Research and Consulting to do some aerial monitoring. Orthogonal scans are essentially pre-programmed, repeatable drone flights that allow you to sort of fly the same thing over and over again to track changes over time. You can see pretty fine scale with those individual burn manzanitas and very young resprouts and that high resolution imagery. We focus very heavily on our chaparral systems, our chaparral plant communities after the 2017 fires for a few different reasons. One, these chaparral, as much as, if not more so than any other plant community type in California, has been shaped by fire and patterns of fire. We have lots of fire obligates, that is, species, the seeds of which require some cue from fire for germination, whether it's exposure to smoke or char or heat. We have a lot of rare taxa in these habitats. And unlike many of our other native plant communities or plant communities, these areas, these chaparral areas have been pretty resistant to invasion and remain native dominated. One of the main types of fire adapted plants that we're tracking are our resprouters. These are species that have the ability to come back from surviving underground root systems after a fire, even if everything above ground has been fire killed. Good example here, this Eastwood's manzanita. You can see that large plated kind of root crown there. and really pretty amazing regrowth in just the first 5 or so months after these. This is the Atlas fire. This is on our Sutro Preserve. I throw this photo in here just because to me, it more than any other photo I've taken, it speaks to the resilience of these resprouters. You can see this chaparral pea, which is a really cool plant, pushing up out of these very, to start with, pretty rocky and almost non-existent soils. This is on near Maggie's Peak on our Archer Taylor Preserve, and then fire impacted soils too. So they really, really are survivors. And then this just speaks to the amazing diversity of native resprouters, trees and shrubs we have documented out there. Another major type of fire adapted species we're tracking are our obligate cedars. These are species that cannot resprout after fire. They only come back from seed. This is an example from near the summit of Mount George, high on our foot preserve, of 2 obligate seeding manzanitas, Stanfords, and Hori. But again, we were excited to see seedlings coming up pretty quickly after the fires. You can see the clumped or cluster distribution of those seedlings. There's some research out there that suggests small mammal caching is really important to the persistence of manzanitas on the landscape. It's kind of interesting to see those coming up in that dense cluster. Not saying that's what happened there, but it's possible. We're tracking a few different types of what we refer to as fire following species as well. These are species that are present in low numbers before a fire, but after a fire, they dramatically increase their numbers, flower prolifically, and very quickly contribute to the soil seed bank while conditions are good for that. Some examples here are Fremont star lily and our golden fairy lanterns. So we've got some rare species among those. This is a really beautiful one, narrow-flowered California birdea, listed as rare, threatened, and endangered in California and elsewhere. Came up in much bigger numbers than we had ever seen it before on the foot preserve. I love this story. This is one of my favorite shrubs, tree poppy or bush poppy. I knew of literally one plant on this 767-foot botanical preserve before the fires. I used to point it out on field trips because it was the only one I knew about. But as you can see in this photo plot comparison, it became the dominant plant over large areas after the fire. So it was there in the seed bank. We have documented species that have been found to only flower after a fire. They're up for many years vegetatively, don't produce any flowers. But they do flower after a fire, like this Sonoma rose. This is a great one. And then again, this slide just speaks to the really amazing diversity of fire opportunist species that we've documented out there. Another type of fire following species we've been tracking are fire obligates. Jake has documented 44 fire obligates in the county. These are species that are absent from an area for a long period of time. Fire comes through and stimulates the seed to germinate in those ways I talked about. Also prepares a good kind of bare mineral soil seed bed for germination. And these species typically only come up for the first year or two following a fire, and then they just exist as seed in the soil. So one of my favorite examples here, the one that was just pictured and shown again here, is fire poppy. When this plant came up after the 2017 fires on our Mount George Preserve, foot preserve on Mount George, it constituted only the 3rd Napa County record for this species. The last time this species was, documented on Mount George was after the 1964 fire. That means it sat in this soil as a seed bank for 53 years before it came up. And this plant came up, flowered, fruited, seeded, and was totally gone by year 2 post-fire. Another really cool example of one of our fire obligate species. This is quite a rare plant, Napa checkerbloom. It is restricted to Napa and the southern Mayacamas mountain ranges. The previous population that Jake knew about on Mount George before the fires numbered in the 5 to 10 plant range. In 2018, we estimated that this plant covered about 15 acres almost continuously and numbered it in about the 680,000 plant range. So really took off. And again, this plant was totally gone from the landscape again, year 4 post-fire. Didn't it only came up vegetatively, as you see in the right-hand photo, the first year, and then flowered prolifically in year two, which was interesting. And the flowers were gorgeous. This is pale pink color, really nice. Okay, one of our most fire-dependent species, Napa-Solano, another rare plant. In fact, the largest known population of the species is on our Foot Botanical Preserve. This is both a fire obligate. The seeds require a heat pulse from fire for germination, and it's an obligate seeder. It only comes back from seed after fire, doesn't resprout. The further we got out from that 1964 fire, the more we were seeing the last sort of sad remaining living stems of these Napa-Solano that were being outcompeted by a dense overstory of manzanita. But we were very happy within just a few months after the fire to start seeing thousands of Napa-Solano seedlings. So they did get the fire. It was pretty clear they got the fire effects they needed for germination. However, this species only has a 25 square mile range. That entire range burned. So we kind of had all of our eggs in one basket scenario. So we wanted to get out and do some survival monitoring, set up lots of plots, about 500 plants. This monitoring is ongoing. Just a few notes from that, just descriptive notes that we've picked up so far. This plant became reproductive again after just year 3. So it was already basically flowering, fruiting, and making seed again after year 3. And as of 2023, over half the plants that we were monitoring had survived, which is actually quite a good survival rate. And then again, this slide just speaks to that really great diversity of fire obligates we've documented out there. Let's get this stuck. Oh, no, okay, it's just very slow. Sorry, jumping again here. Okay, and this is a photo I just threw in. I took it just a few weeks ago, really. I love it because I just think it speaks to the resilience and diversity and beauty of our chaparral. And actually all the purple flowered plant you can see in the foreground is that Napa-Solano. Okay, birds. There's a bird. And I want to recognize Murray right off the bat here. Murray has been absolutely instrumental and the driving force behind allowing us to do the work I'm going to talk about now. So we basically got out after these fires to resample avian point count transects that we had set up before the fires on 2 different preserves. We have now 7, our Rag Ridge Preserve and our Foot Botanical Preserve. We have 7 years of data, Foot Preserve for Rag Ridge, a post-fire point count data now that Murray's been collecting. And one of the coolest stories, I'll talk more about more in-depth data analysis we want to do, but one of the coolest stories to come out of this so far is related to leisurely bunting. We had no pre-fire records of this species on our Foot Preserve. It became the most abundant breeding bird in the first 3 years post-fire. They were, safe to say, all over the place. 60 singing males. That's packed in there. Yeah, just like one territory on top of the other. We think what might be happening, conjecture, but I talked about those fire followers. We have this incredible flush of flowers coming up in those first years after the fires that support a really robust insect population for insectivorous bird species. And then those dense resprouting shrubs provide probably some good nesting substrate for those species as well. But by year 4, we had 1 bird on the entire point count transect. And in years 5 through 7, no detection. So we know leisurely buntings, they're not fire obligates. We find them in unburned areas, but they seem to be a fire follower, essentially. They really key into these recently burned areas to a point and then move on. One note there, we have on Foot Preserve, we do have these overlapping transects of both vegetation or plant species richness and abundance plots, monitoring plots, and the avian point count transects. we're really interested in taking sort of a quantitative look at possible relationships between changes in avian communities and plant communities over time and see how those track one another. So we are starting to work on that. Same deal on our Rag Ridge Preserve. No pre-fire records for the species on the preserve. Became the most abundant breeding bird for now the first 4 years after the fire. This is more of an oak woodland system with pockets of chaparral, a little bit different. And if I have my numbers correct here, Murray had 55 individuals detected in year 4 post-fire. So they're still hanging in there. It will be interesting to see what happens. Murray's going to get out very soon here to do year 5. Just some other incidental wildlife sightings, both small and large. Just amazed to see these banana slugs dispersing out from this sort of spring system on the side of Mount George in this high fire severity area right after these fires survived. It was just that juxtaposition of that yellow banana slug on that charred tree was really amazing. And then a very impressive black bear track that I came across in a recently burned area just after the Atlas fire. This is on our Sutro Preserve near Atlas Peak. And 2020 was another big fire year. Folks might remember, in fact, 42% of Napa County burned in a single fire season that year between 2 fires, the LNU Lightning Complex and the Glass Fire. So when we got out there after these fires to kind of figure out what our monitoring focus should be, this really, well, it was very striking to me. These large areas on a number of preserves of oak woodland that all burned high severity. Everything above ground was fire killed, unfortunately, and they looked like this. So this is what those stands look like on the ground. This is again from a Rag Ridge Preserve, but you can see these resprouts. Oaks really do have an amazing ability to resprout after fires, both basally and from surviving buds on stems. So we got out there, tagged 1,300 trees, worked with Jake to make sure we had IDs correct on all those. 7 species, 5 sites, 3 preserves. What we were looking to do here is track resprout survival both by species and diameter class. We really wanted to, we were kind of asking the question of what proportion of the oaks in the sample initially resprouted in year 1 post-fire, and of those that initially resprouted, how many of those survived until we got 3 years of data before we called it, because it was a very, very challenging field work. And then we tracked growth rates by measuring resprout height each year as well. This was really intended to help inform conservation and restoration efforts. You know, a lot of concern. Oaks don't form a seed bank. It's going to be a long time probably until a tree-forming oak that's put up resprouts is going to be a mature acorn-producing oak again, right? So that's a concern. Hotter, drier conditions, what's going to happen? But at the same time, there's often a lot of energy and enthusiasm around re-oaking after fires. In some cases, maybe the oaks are coming back quite well on their own, and those active measures to re-oak are not needed. So species in the sample included canyon live oak, interior live oak, black oak, coast live oak, scrub oak, valley oak, and blue oaks. A pretty good diversity of oaks, which we generally have in our area. Just a side note here. No, is it going to come up? Yes. Okay. Not this particular black oak, but black oak as a species won the height contest. We actually had one that reached just under 20 feet or 6 meters in height by year 3. So definitely some vigorous resprouting for some of these. That's a coast live oak on the right. And so, yeah, this is a site on our Childs Preserve, one of our sampling sites. Really good resprouting overall initially. However, we did really start to see things hitting these resprouts. We started seeing things like powdery mildew and rodent girdling. So we are starting to see some concerning dieback. I think our biggest concern and red flag here for this data so far was the really dismal survival rates on our blue oaks. We had 212 blue oaks in our sample. We only had 33 surviving, or 15%. As of year 3. So even a lot of the ones that initially came back, that all of those resprouts are dead and they're not resprouting again. So this is where we can, we've actually already started basically doing some blue oak restoration at a small scale. This is where stewardship or management interventions may be needed based on data we collected, because we're losing our blue oaks out there. On a more hardening note, we have one shrub forming oak in our sample, scrub oak, Quercus viverridifolia. This species, in contrast to what I said about how long it's going to be until tree forming oaks form acorns, this one was forming acorns again just 3 years after a fire. So that was cool to see. All right, switching gears to a different type of monitoring. This is quantitative wildlife monitoring on our Dunn Wild Lake and Duff Preserves in northern Napa County, kind of between Angwin and Mount St. Helena. We are using recognized scientific protocols referred to as the Wildlife Picture Index. Relies on a large-scale motion-activated camera grid. It's 20 cameras on a 1 kilometer spacing. We, again, use established protocols to translate the images into data. And then we use these metrics called detection rates and occupancy estimates as a sort of a surrogate for abundance, specifically to track our terrestrial mammal species here. Overall species diversity good, just in terms of basic species presence. All of the kind of critters we had hoped to have out in a wildland area in Napa County like this, we have really detected at this point. There's a few that we're still kind of hoping for. Had some really interesting ones. Disclosure, it's just a stock photo in the middle, but the two grainy black and white photos behind it constitute the only camera documentation of ringtails in the San Francisco Bay region. These are there's not a lot known about their distribution and abundance, but they're very elusive and reclusive. So we had that full grid deployed for, I think, 3 years before we picked up the first ringtail. We've only had 2 in 8 years. So we were very excited when we found this. There's a lot of other folks pretty excited about it too. Another big story, bears, and more bears. We appear to have the highest bear abundance in the San Francisco Bay region in this area. We're concurrently doing a genetic study focusing on a collection of bear scat in collaboration with the North Bay Bear Collaborative. We have found through that work that 41 individuals have used the Wild Lake and Duff Reserves, or just a 16 square kilometer sampling grid that includes Wild Lake and Duff in just the last 3 years. So we got a lot of bears out there. The entire project area, this is a theme, as you're seeing, the entire project area burned in 2020, as well as a large surrounding area. We lost our entire camera grid and had to undertake a major grid redeployment effort. Actually, Penny has been an outstanding WPI volunteer checking cameras for us for years now. We had a great multi-year pre-fire. This was not planned, obviously, but pre-fire data set and a good multi-year post-fire data set. And we just worked with Pisaster Consulting, our conservation analyst, to do a full analysis of our first 8 years of data, including a pre and post-fire element. This is really hot off the press, and we haven't dug in yet, so stay tuned on that. But in short, some species completely blinked out after the fires. We haven't seen them again. Other species disappeared for the first couple of years, then came back. In general, there's just been a lot more fluctuation in the numbers since the fires. So there's going to be some interesting things there, but we're still kind of digging in to this pretty complex and thorough analysis of this data. Just to share some charismatic images here. This was pretty cool. Female puma with 3 cubs. That's cool. You can see the one in the back I circled because it's hard to see. Bears, and more bears, including in the wildflowers. We are not quantifying birds, but we get these cool glimpses into the life of birds here, including some fairly reclusive species like California thrasher and mountain quail. So cool incidental bird images. Pick up owls a bunch too. I asked Murray about I needed to get Murray's help on a nighttime owl photo that ended up being Western screech owls just a few days ago. This is really cool. These are river otters moving along a ridge system pretty far from the nearest water. So that was neat to see. Love those black-tailed jackrabbits. Again, really fun to see all these bears. These are probably a couple second-year cubs. Uh, other felids are bobcat here, and our or sorry, this is a really nice looking black-tailed deer buck. I love this black and white photo of one of our canids, coyote. It's really pretty, just early in the morning. And our other canid species, gray fox, which we get a lot of, but those are great. Okay, I did mention that we do some conservation science research. This is in collaboration with outside scientists and researchers. And I want to tell you about one project in that regard, our redwood research. This is focused around some very unique and outlying stands of redwoods on the east slope of our Dunn Wild Lake Preserve. These are among the most interior redwoods within the range of the species. And as such, they're pretty well cut off from the coastal fog on which redwoods so heavily rely. Redwoods can take moisture up directly from fog through their leaves. Full 41 miles from the nearest point on the open ocean, a full 34 miles from the nearest point on San Francisco or San Pablo Bay. And again, they're not that far off the Pope Valley floor. They occur high in these remote and rugged canyons. So our intent here was to better understand what was pretty clearly a very unique resource within both our preserve system, but also in Napa County. We worked with Dr. Steve Sillett, who I knew from grad school days. Steve has gotten a lot of press over the years for his pioneering work studying the tallest forests in the world. We did data collection, initial data collection some time ago now, 2014, 2016. And we were able to publish this work in a peer-reviewed scientific journal. This work relies on tree ring analysis or dendrochronology. There's a lot you can learn through tree ring analysis about a tree's physical attributes, its age and growth history, and climate growth relationships as well. Just some interesting sort of descriptive information that came out of this, of the 5 trees we sampled. Redwoods definitely get a lot older than this, but clearly establishes these as old growth, 241 to 783 years in age for these. All of the redwoods in Napa County, or all the redwood stands, have been harvested, often a long time ago. Just downstream of these isolated remote stands, everything's been logged. So it's pretty unique to find old growth redwood forest like this. This is pretty interesting. The shortest tree was the oldest, so a disconnection between age and size here. And it took 716 years to reach 40 meters in height. In contrast, the youngest tree had the fastest growing rate, and it only took 127 years to reach 40 meters in height. So really, these redwoods, again, are on the edge, so they need wet feet, and just proximity to the stream and really like microsite conditions seem to have a lot of effect here. These other data that we collected suggest these really are redwoods on the edge of their range, redwoods on the edge of their tolerance. The data shows that they're very sensitive to drought when paired with the climate record. Growth rates decreased an average of 14% across the 11 strongest drought years between 1895 and 2015. Probably has to do with the fact that growth rate is related to water availability during the growing season. And then really sensitive to summer high temperatures too, especially during the height of the growing season, because high temperatures can limit the ability of these trees to photosynthesize during those really important times. This was an interesting kind of side note. In 1932, we had much lower growth than predicted by the climate that year. Looked at the tree ring. There was an anomaly in the wood anatomy. We work with an outstanding dendrochronologist on this, by the way, who's up in the Sillett lab, Allison Carroll. And started digging around and found that a wildfire had come through. There was a newspaper article from a Healdsburg newspaper, and actually something from a bird journal that described the fire, 1931 fire. So interestingly, there was a 43% decrease the first year after the fire. And then after that, over 100% increase within the next 5-year window. You can kind of see that in another way here, that 1932 blip where we have a shift of much, much lower than expected growth based on climate to a shift of multiple years of much higher than expected growth. We think probably what's going on here is the tree kind of suffers the immediate impacts or stress of the fire, but after that, a lot of trees around it have succumbed to the fire, and it is essentially reduced competition for resources. This is a quote from the conclusion section of the paper. Insights gained from these growth histories and relationships with climate and fire add to the understanding of redwood ecology across the landscape. So just very happy that this really cool resource within a land trust preserve could serve that purpose. Switching gears again a little bit, but sticking with the forest theme, I want to talk a little bit about our forest and wildfire resilience work. I'll talk a little bit about a specific example from our Linda Falls Preserve, 20-acre thinning project. We're in the age of climate change induced changes to wildfire regimes. And we've got these forests that are pretty out of whack because of long-term fire exclusion and suppression. This is a good example of a pre-treatment condition from our Linda Falls Preserve. We have these very high densities of small and young Douglas fir and California bay laurel. Here's another example of this forest condition. So working with our partners at the Napa County Resource Conservation District, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and the California Coastal Conservancy, in the case of the Linda Falls project, we do a lot of work to basically use hand crews to try to get these forests back in balance, thinning, limbing, chipping, pile burning. So just to kind of dig into why we do this, we're really trying to increase forest resilience in the face of climate change and wildfire here. We are a very large landowner in Napa County. We're trying to do our part for, yes, community wildfire protection, but specifically we're trying to decrease fire severity and tree mortality going forward by reducing ladder fuels, increasing the health and growth of the remaining trees by reducing resource competition, especially in light of hotter, drier conditions out there with climate change. And then increase habitat diversity. We have Doug fir coming into oak woodlands that would have been essentially controlled by low severity frequent fire historically. We really want to keep a diversity of tree species on there other than dominant Douglas fir and California bay laurel, things like our oaks and our ponderosa pines. So this is the really important point with this work. I talked about upfront managing for multiple benefits. Yes, we want to get some fuels reduction benefit here, but we're really trying to do this in a way where we retain enough complexity in the structure and composition of these forests that they still function ecologically. We don't want to oversimplify it, open it up too much, park it out too much. We're really trying to retain that ecological integrity. So diversity of species and ages and size classes. We're building these wildlife habitat structures as part of this work. We really want the forest to still function ecologically. This is really what we're trying to prevent. A lot of you have probably seen this driving up Deer Park Road. We've had a lot of this fire on the landscape. There is a place, especially for birds. I think about blackback woodpeckers. There's a place for high severity fire and wildlife, among other things. We've had a lot of this though, and it is fueled by climate change. So we just really want to prevent our Linda Falls forest and our other forests on our preserves from ending up like this after the next fire. We're not trying to keep fire out. We just want to reduce future fire severity. Talk a little bit about another sort of multiple benefit body of work that we do. And this is a very specific type of prescribed grazing. This is our biggest project here. This is indicative of the condition. I talked about the Wantra Preserve a little bit before, of the oak woodland understory across the Wantra Preserve. This very heavy buildup of this almost entirely non-native annual plant dry material. You can see how bad it's gotten in a lot of areas on the preserve, or it had. We weren't going to burn our way out of it. We weren't going to spray our way out of it. We weren't going to mow our way out of it. So we decided to try some very specific type of grazing using small ruminants and multi-paddock methods here. The goal here, again, is to reduce that heavy accumulation of that annual plant dry material, both for fuels reduction, that stuff can very quickly carry a fire, but also wheat thatch has been shown to really suppress native plants. It can really have a negative impact on the seed germination, growth, survival, and reproduction of the remaining native plants in these areas. We use these multi-paddock methods. We have herders living on site during the time grazing is going on. We use all portable electric fencing and water systems. We're keeping animals grouped up and moving just about daily, similar to what herds of native ungulates would have done historically. And this also gives us a really high level of control over this grazing with timing and duration, and allows us to get good even coverage in each paddock before the animals move on. In terms of the dry season timing, this is an effective time for fuels reduction because you're hitting the fuels at a time they won't just grow right back. But equally or more importantly, we do this after most of the natives, remaining natives in these areas have produced and dispersed seed. So you're allowing the native plants to do their thing reproductively before you start grazing. So because there is an increased use of and interest in small ruminant grazing for fuels management pretty broadly these days, because of these dual restoration and fuels reduction objectives, and because we're working in oak woodland types that are very widely distributed in California, we really wanted to quantify the effects of this type of grazing on our native plant communities. We thought we could, again, we may have benefits related to the dry season timing and that thatch reduction, but we really wanted to ask the question, are we seeing statistically significant changes in native plant species richness and abundance with this grazing? So we got out there and set up these replicated plots on a fairly rigorous sampling design across multiple grazing units. And we did receive an NRCS Conservation Innovation Grant for this work. We ended up with 180 paired grazed and ungrazed plots. Animals were allowed to graze right through the grazed plots. They were excluded from the control plots or the ungrazed plots. Data on all of the plant material in each plot was identified down to subspecies level, again, by Jake Rugit. And we wanted to have a minimum of 3 years of data on all plots before we did the analysis. This is a whole presentation to go through this analysis. It was pretty in depth, but just in short, we use these mixed effects models, these specific type of regression model to analyze grazing effects and look at the possible influence of other variables other than grazed or ungrazed. So just the takeaway here at the high level is we found higher native species richness, that is the number of native species, and higher native species abundance, that is the cover of native species in grazed and in ungrazed plots. And these results were highly statistically significant. So we've shown that, at least in this instance at this site, we can have a beneficial effect for natives through this very carefully controlled grazing. Not all grazing is created equally. All right, shifting gears. Tell you a little bit about a really important and kind of growing body of our stewardship work, rare, threatened, and endangered species conservation and recovery. We've got a lot of, I've already alluded to a number of species of special status species out on the landscape. And this is really about protecting and restoring biodiversity because we know how important that is to have this full complement of species around for ecosystem function and resilience. Our biggest project right now in this regard is our California red-legged frog conservation and recovery project. California red-legged frog is listed as threatened under the Federal Endangered Species Act. Its declines are largely attributed to habitat loss and the introduction of invasive predators like bullfrogs. We received a grant from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and California Department of Fish and Wildlife through their Endangered Species Conservation and Recovery Program grant to do a project that had a lot of different facets to it: egg mass translocation, movement study. I'll talk about the pit tagging in a minute. Removing invasive predators, enhancing upland habitat, doing other species of greatest conservation needs surveys, and then basically monitoring post-fire changes in frog habitat, both from the air and from the ground. This work focuses on these this really high-quality pond but previously unoccupied pond habitat on the Rag Ridge Reserve. Rag Ridge lies within a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service designated core recovery area for the species, the Lake Berryessa tributaries, and it also contains designated critical habitat for the species. So we wanted to take advantage of that. This, again, started with partial egg mass collection from a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service approved donor site. These are ponds that have far more egg masses in them than they can support, so this is not having an impact on the source population. Then we translocate these eggs into this pond habitat on the Rag Ridge Preserve. The eggs are, there's an acclimation process, and then the eggs are placed into these predator exclusion or rearing pens, where they stay at various levels. They're multi-level structures through the kind of early larval or tadpole stage to protect them from mammalian, avian, and aquatic predators. We are closely monitoring basically how the tadpoles are doing as they develop, and when they're ready, they are released into the open ponds. When we reached the stage, we didn't know if we were even going to get here with this, but we did, fortunately, of having these sort of like young adult or post-metamorphic stage frogs. We actually fix them with these or insert these passive integrated transponders that allow us to both track their movements and do essentially like a mark recapture study or work to track their survival. We're enhancing upland habitat through constructing these essentially habitat piles. These frogs will move long distances, like kilometers, through the uplands between wetlands, and they need these sort of cover sites while they're doing their thing up there, foraging and et cetera. Just in terms of where we're at with this project, we have now translocated 10 partial egg masses. Thousands of those eggs have hatched and produced larvae. We've now pit tagged just under 1,600 post-metamorphic frogs. That success rate is actually 6 times higher than any other California red-legged frog translocation project to date. And they reached adult size and sexual maturity a full 2 years earlier than had been previously documented. That may just be a gap in the literature. There hasn't been a lot of projects like this that allow you to kind of gauge that. I just want to recognize the contributions of this guy here, Jeff Alvarez. He's our lead biologist on the project, a California red-legged frog expert, and just a really outstanding biologist in general. And he's really been the lead on a lot of especially the hands-on stuff. He's the one who is knowledgeable and permitted to actually handle these animals. And very exciting, as of 2024, we found our first wild egg masses. These are eggs laid by frogs hatched from translocated egg masses. And that was a good indication. We have now successfully established a new reproductive population of California red-legged frog on this land trust preserve. And then in 2025, just a few months ago, kind of February, March, we actually documented 18 wild egg masses spread across all 3 ponds. So again, good, another data point suggesting that we have a sort of functional reproductive frog population out there, which is cool. Okay, one other threatened species project I will tell you about is that we have going on our Sutro Preserve is our Western Monarch Conservation Project. I'm sure many, if not all of you, are familiar with the plight of the Western Monarch population. Just dramatic declines from millions that used to overwinter on in the Pacific Coast area. In fact, I think this is the latest. This is the most recent Xerxes count. Had them at almost an all-time low. The second lowest overwintering population ever recorded at less than 10,000 butterflies. So not great news. They fluctuate a lot, but overall they've been really in pretty sharp decline. We received a grant from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service through their Partners for Fish and Wildlife program and a matching private donation to start a project, the primary goal of which was to enhance both monarch breeding and foraging habitat. This project, the impetus for this project and one of its main focuses is this far less common but very important early emerging species of milkweed, heartleaf milkweed, Asclepias cordifolia. We wanted to enhance that larval host plant through propagation and also controlling invasive species where it occurred. There was an existing population on the Sutro Preserve where this project is focused. It's a really pretty plant. You can see there in the photo. And then we also wanted to enhance monarch foraging resources. We had a handful of species that are known nectar plants for monarchs that we collect, we wanted to propagate to, basically. And then lots of monitoring of both the plant populations and direct observations of the monarchs. Just in terms of where we're at with this project, we have done 2 rounds of seed collection of both milkweed and foraging plants. We work with an outstanding native plant nursery at the Laguna de Santa Rosa Foundation, the conservation organization outside of Santa Rosa, Ayla Mills there. We have successfully propagated 400 milkweed. This is a pretty big deal because this species had never been propagated for restoration before. Ayla had to kind of figure out how to do it. And fortunately, we were successful. And then 400 of those foraging plants too over a handful of species. And then we've been working with our ACE AmeriCorps crews and volunteers to prep sites for planting, remove invasives in those areas, and then actually hold these planting events that have our grant partners at the Fish and Wildlife Service and ACE crews and volunteers. They're great great events. We've been very happy to sort of continue to see, sort of consistently see monarch occupancy of these sites every year since we started. All phases of the life cycle essentially we have documented out there: eggs, the caterpillars, the chrysalis form, and the adults. Okay, just one other part of the program I want to mention, because this is really important for us. Chip and Penny and others help out a bunch with it. We have a very robust field. We really do try to do a lot of outreach education and provide public access opportunities. We have a very robust field trip program, 2 seasons a year. Lots of great hikes led by trained volunteer hike leaders. But also we have topic-specific hikes led by people like Jeff Alvarez and Jake Rugit, who and Murray have our experts lead these topic-specific hikes as well. Do a lot of volunteer work days, and then hold visitor orientations for public access as well. We actually spend quite a bit of time and resources on signage and trail maintenance, interpretive trail signage like this trail signage actually in that restoration area on the Misamer Preserve that we got a Napa Wildlife Conservation Commission grant from. Greg's on the commission actually, and directional trail signage and trailhead kiosk signage as well. And then we have our ACE AmeriCorps crews out doing lots of trail work every sort of spring and summer. This is the Redwood Creek Trail on Archer Taylor that they're working on there. And with that, I will go ahead and finish up. I'll leave you with a winter photo from the Linda Falls Preserve during that crazy snow event people may remember from 2023, and a springtime photo in our grazing project area at our Wanderer Preserve. And I'm happy to take any questions folks have. Thank you so much. Bill.
Milkweed.
Yeah. Yeah.
The different species of milkweed are some better for monarchs?
I am not a monarch expert. The folks at the Napa Resource Conservation District are, I think, the monarch people. I don't know, Chip, if you have any. Yeah, they do a ton of monarch work and know a lot. Erin Arnstein she works for Monarch Joint Venture and lives in Napa. She's a great resource too. I don't know the relative. This one, the one that I mentioned is because climate change is causing monarchs to leave their overwintering grounds on the coast and start migrating earlier and earlier. This early emerging milkweed that was the one we had on yeah, the heartleaf was really important. This one is far less common in the Bay region, and the other is like narrow-leaved. But yes, in terms of relative importance, unfortunately, I can connect with you. Yeah, I think they utilize all of them. We have seen monarchs incidentally on the woolly leaf. We have some in the riparian areas at Missimer along Butts Creek, and then the narrow leaf we've seen too. So yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
It's nice to say that, you know, as long as you stick with the natives, you're good. But the problem is a lot of people plant that tropical hybrid, and it does have a season like ours do. Those tricks them in staying there longer, they'll be migrating. So we're really advised not to grow the tropical ones.
That's a really good point. Yeah, thank you. That's a great point. Yeah. And RCD does do a lot of work with garden plantings and plantings on kind of agricultural fringes, I think, and things like that. So they have a really good handle. Yeah, sorry, we can have them.
Well, I want to say thank you. I didn't realize the breadth and depth of all the projects that the organization, leads. And it's just fascinating to see the before and after pictures of the restoration that you've done. And I'm just curious, getting back to the bird question.
Sure.
And Murray, it sounds like you're part of the monitoring.
Yes.
So was the bunting just an example of all of different species that you're monitoring, or was that the only one that you're monitoring? How does that?
Murray's doing avian point counts using the Point Blue Conservation Science or PRBO methods for distance sampling. So he's doing the full. I mean, jump in here, Murray, but he's counting everything. Go ahead. Yeah.
Increased during that time. Most groundwater, not fair. Foolish stuff. It's not the only one, but it's the most intensely dramatic.
Okay. And that report that just is going to be coming out, the WPI,
Yes.
that shows which species are reoccurring, which may not be. Where's that data available? Is it on your website?
Not nowhere yet because it's like hot off the press, but we do hope to share it out in various forms. So we can keep you updated on that. But yeah, it's not available anywhere yet because we just finished the analysis and we're just kind of digging in. So yeah, I will say, it's interesting for that. It was very hard to keep the cameras going after the fires. It was a very changed landscape. We had a lot of cameras shooting through. It was it was exposure issues. It was like light and shadow issues. So some of the variability we see may actually be because of a more variable camera effort. You have to collect the data very consistently in a very specific way to be able to utilize all of it. So anyway, we're still sorting it all out, but yeah. And again, on the bird front for like Foot and Rag Ridge, to your first question, looking at the entire avian community composition, I'm really fascinated to take a more sort of quantitative look at that and use some statistical techniques that can kind of quantify changes in avian community composition over time. And then again, link that to the changes in the structure and composition of the plants as they came back over. Because you saw that first photo I showed, it was a moonscape, right? And I think on your first, there's like almost the first year, it was depauperate, basically it was, there was almost nothing. And then things started coming back. It was just taking a quick look at Murray's data I'm already excited about it. But again, we haven't done the analysis on that yet. That's the thing about this monitoring data. We get so excited about collecting it, then you actually have to, it's a lot to collect it. Then you actually have to figure out how to get it analyzed and get the word out about it. So it's like, we can all, thank you.
Really interesting. Yeah. Lucas and I went up the Berryessa to Knoxville Road a few years back after the fires up there, probably a year or two after. There were more leisurely buntings than I'd ever seen anywhere, similar to what you saw. Yeah. There were also lots of rufous crown and bell sparrows. So there was enough undercover for the bell sparrows, and then a thrasher or two.
The best fires
Yeah.
Yeah. And we had the bunting story there too. Unfortunately, we weren't set up because that would have been a third location where we could have documented the bunting phenomenon. But,
Steps go on for, so like, how long?
yeah. I'd love to get like that. Yeah, we're about to do your A. I'd love to have a 10-year data set before we try to like work it up and kind of publish it somewhere. That would be cool, but
Things moved on.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. Yeah, go ahead.
Back to, fire restoration. Is there, I'm just curious to know, our land trust, do you share information with Sonoma land trust people or other?
Yeah.
So speak up a little bit and then
Yeah.
maybe repeat it.
Sure. The question was basically the data that we're collecting at the Napa Land Trust, do we share that out to like other conservation groups like Sonoma Land Trust? Definitely for some of the data, we try to collect it in a way that it's standardized so we can scale that up to larger like regional data sets. Not always though. Sometimes it's just us getting out and doing whatever we can do. Like in a short time frame, time sensitive data collection. And in that case, not all, sometimes, but not always is, we're always happy to share data. So, if Sonoma Land Trust was doing similar work, we had, we are always looking for opportunities to collaborate, share information, share data. So we're not averse to it. It's just we don't always collect it in a way that may be useful to somebody else, or we don't always make that connection with the other groups. It's funny. We'll meet with another stewardship team from the Land Trust. We're like, oh, you guys have been doing this for the last 5 years too. That's cool. Like it's like, we were doing the same thing in the same way. We didn't even know it. So it's part of it's just having the time to like actually do the collaboration. Yeah, go ahead, Robin.
Mike, are you publishing, looks like you wrote several articles. Are they being published in a peer review journal?
The only one I mentioned that is published is the Redwood Research. And that's in a journal called Dendrochronologia. We just submitted a manuscript for publication on the grazing analysis. It's in review. So we're confident it will be published somewhere, but we don't know where yet. We've only submitted to one journal. It's in review there. And then there's a few other, I'm not sure, we have like a handful of those sort of quantitative monitoring projects we'd like to get published. The bird and plant data is another one we'd really like to work up. And we think probably could get published somewhere. We're not a research institution, as you know, it's just, I have a little bit of that background and I'd love to keep some of that in our stewardship work. It's not a major focus for me or my role either. It's just if we ended up with a strong data set, there seems to be a lot of interest in sharing it out. We're like, okay, well, let's maybe try to publish it, and we'll partner with academics and analysts and stuff to do that.
So when that's published, then that's shared throughout the community that is interested in, what happens in fire.
Exactly. So it's available through all of the scientific databases and search engines, and it's just out there to be cited and read and that sort of thing. So yeah.
Eating a lot of animals for our Saturday.
Okay.
We just talk about monitoring the easements,
Yeah.
and doing trips, doing trips for hiking.
Yeah.
And now I didn't realize so much science.
Oh, thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
And we would be happy to pitch in volunteers to help with leading bird trips as part of the education program that you have. So
That's great. We would
just let
love,
us keep
yes,
posted.
we love it. Yeah, would love to do that. I would absolutely love to, we would love to partner with Audubon more. And I love getting out and talking about bird conservation and looking at birds. Something Phil and I both. Yeah. I was going to say, Robin is an amazing resource for doing birding trips, owls and raptors and other things. Murray has led a bunch of trips too, and he and I have done stuff together. And so, we only have great folks doing some bird stuff now, but we would love to partner more with Audubon.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Thank you. Is there any work being done to look at insects, which are almost at the bottom of the food web, other than monarchs?
Great question. The short answer is it is an incredibly important part of our biodiversity picture, and no, we don't do a lot with them. I'd love to do more with insects. I know, for example, what just came to mind is the folks at UC Davis McLaughlin Reserve that were doing the serpentine prairie restoration before we utilized their methods. They did a full pollinator study to look at, basically pollinator richness and abundance in those restored meadows versus the invaded meadows, that sort of thing. And I mean, there's just so much interesting stuff we could do. For a long time, I was saying our reptiles and amphibians, we're not doing anything with those. It's so important. We're doing more with those now, as I talked about, but it's a good point. Thank you for bringing it up. If you have any ideas or know of any possible collaborations, sometimes it's like, there's only so much we can do, but insects are fascinating. They're obviously, you're right, totally foundational to these ecosystems. And yeah, we'd like to do more. Butterflies, yeah.
The red-legged frog information, phenomenal. That's
Thank you.
really
Yeah,
amazing.
that's been a very gratifying project.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So anyone with a pond up there, we should.
It's not quite that simple, but we could do an assessment at least with Jeff Alvarez, who knows what he's talking about.
And one thing that Lake Hennessy agrees, asking is blowing the concrete bridge now here. There's a big colony developing a 13 restoration. And you can look at from that open spot on Con Valley Road. It's great. It's fun to watch. They don't mind you watching from up above.
Yeah.
Is that up at the head of the lake? Like
Con Valley roadside.
Okay.
From San Lena.
Oh, on that side. Okay.
Before you get to the
Okay.
boat ramp, right?
No.
Yeah.
So like San Lena?
Oh, the north side, the north end.
Okay.
Okay.
It's something you don't get to see very.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's very visible. It's easy to see. A lot of fun.
Oh, that's so cool. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? If not, I can wrap it up. Yeah. Thank you for hanging in there. I know that was a lot of information and a full hour of it. So thank you.
For all those bird fanatics in our audience, there were a couple of Franklin skulls at Napa WTP. And that's a pretty rare bird. Pardon? Yesterday or the day before, Logan Kale spotted them. And he's very reliable. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you guys for coming, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
Mike, thanks very,
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you, Mark.